Once you remove this, we'll start, right? Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this very important live of News18.com. The 13th round of Corps Commander talks that took place in Moldova yesterday ended in a stalemate. There was no breakthrough, with India stating that China did not agree to some of the constructive suggestions that it made. It also said that China did not put forth any forward looking proposals for resolving the pending issues at the LAC. Meanwhile, China has accused India of making unrealistic and unreasonable demands for resolving the issues at the LAC. With this deadlock, both the countries now stare at yet another long, harsh winter ahead. We have with us a very special guest, Lieutenant General PJS Panu, who has served as the 14th Corps Commander in the area. Welcome to the live, sir. So my first question.
Thank you, Amrita.
Right, sir. So my first question to you is, why do you think the talks ended in a stalemate, and what are its implications, given that there are winters approaching?
Thank you, Amrita. Very pertinent question on the 13th round of co-commanders talks, and also that winters are approaching. I think these are two very important points of discussion. As far as the co-commanders talks are concerned, you would know that talking is one part of strategy, and pushing troops on ground is yet another part of the strategy. Yet they both link up at a grand strategy, and both are used for signaling. It is the way the two countries sometimes do the business where the military gets involved. It is sometimes not about a few inches of ground, a few 100 meters of ground. It is more to do with making one country feel uh, to be brought to a position where you can say that yes, you are listening to us, and if you are actually pulling your guns at each other on the line of actual control, then the situation is not conducive to talks. But what is happening here is that you talk and you pull out your guns on the LAC and you militarize the area. It is a strategy which China uses to uh, have a signaling process on through talks and through push. You go back to 2012-13, you know that the president from China came and they were sitting, actually, two heads of the states were sitting together while the Chinese are actually pushing the troops in Ladakh. How can you do this when the heads of the states are sitting together? So you talk, but you push troops at the same time. So this is the strategy of China, which has been going on for a very, very long time. And from last year, when Galwan incident happened, Indians actually responded to them in a manner that areas which were earlier patrolled, this time Chinese did not go back. They came to patrol the area, and we have also been patrolling the area. They came to the northern bank, they came up to Finger Four, and then pushed beyond and never went back and started consolidating there. They also came to Gogra, they came to Hot Spring, and later on, they also came to Y Junction in Dibsan. These are the areas that they used to come and go back. And we would also go to our claim lines to patrol. But this time, since they did not go back, our patrols had to push them out. And therefore, there was a combative situation resulting in, um, you know, physical attack and bloodshed that happened both sides. And you're aware of the figures. And these are best avoided when both sides are nuclearly armed. And nuclear armed nations do not go to war like this on, fighting over the LOC soldier to soldier. Though, according to the agreement, they're not supposed to use military means, but the military soldiers were used, but they did not use firearms. That was the only difference. So ever since they haven't gone back, but selectively, then when they went back in February this year, they pulled out from north of Pagongso on their own and then expected India to match the response. And Indians, as a responsible country, also pulled back from south of Pagongso. But that is how the checkmate was in that area, expecting that the Chinese would pull out from the other areas gradually, because these things sometimes do take time. But I think it has taken unusually long time, And I think the intention of China is to build up and gain time. And in the shadow of talks, they are only building up and coming to the borders and making incursions more and more intensely and in wider areas.
All right. So, which means there is definitely a trust deficit between the two countries. And how do you think that would pan out, given the winters are ahead?
The trust deficit has been there for a very, very long time. The Chinese have been actually blocking all um, the Indian interests elsewhere in the world. They have also been talking against India in the high tables, even at the United Nations many times. Though there has been convergence in the past in certain areas of climate change, but largely when it comes to trade, it comes to certain areas of security, they always side Pakistan, and also in a manner that they want to see Indian interests are not looked after uh, in such high tables, and therefore there's always an embarrassment and mistrust which they build. They have been pushing troops here on the LAC and McMahon line as well. Uh, and though many talks have happened which are in a good conducive atmosphere, but they say something and do something else, and that is typically what Chinese do. They don't live up to what they say. In any case, when they speak Chinese language, they speak a lot in metaphor. You have to decipher what they're saying, and then they would like to test your patience. If they make a commitment, they would not uh, upon it, and they want to test your patience, and they expect you to lose your patience, and then they will use that against you.
So, how do you think what should India do at this situation, given that this talks failed, and what should be the way forward for India?
Militarily, India is quite prepared to defend its interests, even militarily. India is also a country which is peace loving and also has time uh, at hand. It is not that we can and we should achieve something within weeks or within months. We have time. And I suppose over a period of time, maturity has to be shown by both sides. They can continue to have talks. But the fact is that the troops are now on the high altitude area, super high altitude area, they're deployed there. They will continue to deploy. It is just that both sides have deployed, and the Chinese have only over years, a year and a half in particular, have built up more and more troops in that area.
All right. So, do you think this sort of impasse or this sort of aggressive patrolling? Last week there was some aggressive patrolling by China in the Tawan sector. There was something in central sector Bharati as well. Do you think China is sort of making incursions in other places as well, not just in eastern Ladakh?
Not making aggressive. I don't know. It is a matter of perception. What is aggressive? What is not? When you push a patrol in an area where traditionally you don't come, I mean, you can say and call it an aggression.
A
But
big
also,
patrol.
it is also going against the understanding and the climate of peace which was created, and mutually we have decided that in certain areas we would not patrol. And if we patrol in that area, yes, it can be seen as somebody who's militarily taking a unilateral decision to come in, which is not acceptable.
Right. So, do you think that this kind of disengagement is, I mean, this has been extremely slow, as you just said. So, do you think this disengagement and a future de escalation is going to take a lot of time, or do you see a permanent deployment of Indian troops at the LAC like we have in the LOC?
In any case, has been a permanent presence of Indian troops. It is only the strength and the force levels would change. And when I say change, obviously I indicate that they would increase. You have to see the whole issue of border, engagements in the larger perspective of what is happening in the region. The Chinese have been using the Western Highway, which is an excitation, to link up Xinjiang, which is an area where there are a lot of minerals. And also, there are people who are not very friendly with them, and Ugyur problem is there. And they're using the same area to get into Gilgit-Baltistan area. And then Sipek corridor takes off from there, passing the Kunjareb, pass on the Karakoram range, and then getting into Gilgit-Baltistan and further on to Gwadar. They have used the same CPEC corridor from this area to now enter Afghanistan with the help of Pakistan. So a lot is happening in this area, that the area of excitation is seeing the deployment of this kind of a nature, so that the Indian troops should not interfere in any development which is happening in the region, where Chinese are increasingly showing the presence in to protect the CPEC corridor, and is also going to Afghanistan for search of minerals, and also finding new business in that area. With Taliban having freshly taken over the country, I think there's a lot of understanding or a lot of underlying, actions which are happening there, which are not being reported. But the point is, Pakistan is literally carrying China on the piggyback and taking them to Afghanistan. So there is a larger connection in this area where Pakistan-China axis is at play. The situation in Afghanistan is at play. And India's interest in Jammu and Kashmir, where Article 370 has been abrogated. There is a new way that you look at when you make it a union territory of Ladakh. And then, even Jammu and Kashmir don't have that same status as it had of statehood under Article 370. So all that has undergone a change. So China and Pakistan both together look at India, that we are changing something as far as the understanding of the status of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. And by extending this understanding into Exaichen and the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, they come together to speak a language privately, and then they talk at us in a way what we are now seeing on our border talks or talks elsewhere in the globe, wherever the leaders are meeting, and also the military action which is happening on the line of actual control. Also, what is of concern for China, it appears, is that whatever is happening here is also having a larger global perspective. Dimensions are there, where the Quad is being formed up, and India is an active member of Quad, and head of the states have met there. China is very unhappy about it, obviously, because if you, as Indians, are dealing with Americans and making an organization which could turn military at some point, and the interests of America, India, Japan, and Australia coming together as Quad, and if it gets militarized, then they feel that they would be threatened in the Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific region, as is being spoken about. So as a result, if you feel that these Quad countries are going to get into the Indian Ocean and Indo-Pacific region, the counter to that is to push them around on the northern borders. So that is another dimension to it.
Right, right. So, you served there? Could you take the viewers through the challenges that the troops would face as they continue to be deployed in large numbers at the eastern Ladakh region?
I can speak from two perspectives. One is the difficulty of the troops. The temperatures would go down to minus 35 to 40 degrees during winters, and there would be snowfall in our area, and some passes would get closed. Troops obviously have to be looked after. The logistics are very different as compared to summers. However, having said that, Indian troops have been deployed over 30 years in Siachen Glacier, which is the coldest or the highest battlefield in the world. There are no troops anywhere in the world which are deployed in such harsh conditions. Most of our battalions have had tenures there in 14,000 to 19,000 feet above mean sea level. There is hardly any officer who has not fought in super high altitude. They have also had battalions, a number of battalions who've participated in Kargil operations, with Pakistan Pakistan had occupied in 1999. And also now the deployment is such that very large number of battalions continue to serve in super high altitude areas in the kind of difficulty no other military has seen in the world, including our Air Force has been flying along with the Army aviation in those areas. So difficulties are there, challenges are there. They would become more intense during winters. The oxygen is going to be less, the health is going to suffer. But I suppose this is equally applicable to the PLA. PLA has brought in a lot of technology. They bring in oxygen chambers, for rapid acclimatization. They push in a lot of technology-based, hospitals which are in containers to forward areas. They bring in vehicles. They have built a lot of infrastructure in that area because of the vehicles which can come because of the infrastructure, because the terrain on the other side of the LAC is more favorable. It is flatter than it is on our side. It is easier for them to build infrastructure and bring in vehicles as close to the line of actual control as possible. So the Chinese troops on one side are not accustomed to staying by themselves and suffering logistic breakdown, while Indian troops have always innovated and always have had this kind of experience of survival. But they would survive. They would survive well. But better could have been done in understanding with the co-commanders if they had decided to do what they actually meant, rather than putting ambiguous conditions for withdrawal, because they've always changed the goalpost when they put conditions. You can never understand what conditions they're putting. I mean, largely they will talk about the understanding sometimes, in a very oblique manner about the J&K status. Sometimes they would say that India is building infrastructure in that area, which is threatening to their interests. So it threatens their Western Highway, though they don't say it. They don't want the DSDBO road. Initially, they had a problem that we built it. Now they have a problem that once the road is built, if we are developing infrastructure in that area, and if India pumps in more and more troops in that area, it would become difficult for later on to justify the line of actual control as they claim. So these are a number of reasons that the Chinese have, and they explain these in a very oblique manner, never in a very direct manner.
All right. Sir, that was some really interesting insight. My last question to you is slightly hypothetical. Do you think this stalemate is going to continue for some more time in the near future?
When Galwan happened, this question was also asked. And when selectively some de-escalation happened and the withdrawal happened, this question was again asked. And the responses were also in the same line, that if they decide to de-escalate, some amount of de-escalation happens in the overall climate of mistrust. And therefore, very difficult for the first person to make a move, because they expect the other person to move first. Because should you take initiative, the other person comes and occupies the same area, that puts you at a disadvantage. The Indians have always been trusted that the Chinese would withdraw as was decided on the table, but they always come up with a new understanding on the ground against what actually they spoke on the table. And they start putting new conditions for withdrawal, which are more tactical in nature. So at the end of it, when you go to the next co-commanders meet, the first one, they always have a reason to say that, actually on ground, these few things happened which we thought would happen differently. So, we can't do it. So then start putting new conditions around it. The climate of confidence is the only climate in which this kind of a de-escalation can happen. And you're right, if there is no trust, then I think it can take a very long time for a de-escalation to happen.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on this live with us. And that was very, very interesting inputs from somebody who served there. And do log into news18.com to read more of our India-China coverage. Thank you very much, sir, for joining on this live.
Thank you, Amrita. A pleasure to be here with you on News 18.